I decided to add this problem to your course textbook and reading guide because it is in your midterm practice material. So the very first ratio we have to find is accounts receivable. The accounts receivable is simply taking the sales dollars. In this case, you have to be careful. It's credit sales of $3 million and dividing it by the receivables turn. So you get a number of 500,000. What does that represent? What that represents is your average accounts receivable balance. On average, there's $500,000 invested in accounts receivable because accounts receivable is an asset, so that's considered to be an investment. So you have $500,000 tied up in accounts receivable, money that's owed to you, but your customers have not paid it yet. Now, to find the marketable securities is a little bit more challenging because we have to do a couple of steps. As you can see, we take the current ratio and we multiply it by the current liabilities because the formula for current ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. So we rearrange the formula. So we take the 2.5 times current ratio, which represents there's $2.50 of current assets for every dollar of liabilities. There are $700,000 worth of liabilities. So at 2.5 times, you wind up with 1,750,000 of total current assets. Now that's made up by, as you can see, cash, accounts receivable, and inventory. So we need to subtract the cash balance of 150,000 from the 1.75 million. We also need to subtract the 500,000 and the 850,000 from inventory. The 500,000 comes from part A, by the way. That's the AR balance. So what are we left with? We have a difference or discrepancy between the 1.75 million and the 1.5 million. And what is that? That is marketable securities. Marketable securities are items that are traded in the current market, or it's in the money market, sorry. And what they are things like notes payable, notes receivable in this particular case. Companies lend money to other companies on a short-term basis. So they can do that in a number of different ways. And that's what this company has. They have $250,000 that's owed to them from other sources. So that's how you calculate it. So it's a little more advanced. You have to find out the total current assets. Then you subtract out the cash, the accounts receivable, and the inventory. Now, capital assets are the difference between total assets and current assets. So you take the asset turnover of 1.25, which represents for every dollar you have invested, you are generating $1.25 in sales. So you divide. So your sales are 2.4 million, as you can see. You subtract the current asset portion, the total current assets that we have from above, and you're left with a difference of 650,000. Part D, in this particular case, long-term debt. So of course, that's the difference between total debt and current debt or liabilities. You have $2.4 million in total assets. 40% of represents debt. So for every dollar you have in an asset, you actually owe 40 cents. So if you had a mortgage for $100,000, your mortgage balance would be 40,000. Sorry, if you had a house for 100,000, your mortgage balance would be 40%, and you would have a $40,000 mortgage. So in this particular case, you have assets worth $2.4 million, and you owe 40%, which means you own 60%. So you have total debt of 960,000 total debt, but 700,000 is current, So the difference between the two is your total long-term debt.